Hello there, beautiful human. Melinda Joy, Crossroads Storyteller here with a tips and tricks video for getting to know a new deck or an old deck, but a deck that you would like to get to know more intimately. Perhaps it's one you don't yet know or that you've been feeling disconnected from. Maybe it's a new system, etc. There's lots of reasons to get more intimate with a deck. And that said, this is a series, so there will be other videos with other themed tips and tricks. And so definitely pick whichever idea works best for you. And if the way I present it doesn't work for you, but you like the idea of it, please take it and run with it. Yeah, definitely want to support your inner authority and knowing. So that said, let's get into this video, which is about looking at your deck. I know it sounds really, really simple, but it's not something I thought to do when I was a beginner reader. And it is one of the most supportive tips or tricks that I use on a consistent basis to get to know a deck. Because tarot decks are so visual, like that's like their primary mode of communication is through the picture that's on the front of them. Knowing those images is important to knowing the deck. So I pulled my Ritual Tarot by Tiara May because I just received it in the mail, and this particular way of getting to know a deck has been really, really helpful with this deck. And so the first suggestion for looking at your deck is to keep it in order or put it in order and look at each card in order. Now, I'm moving through it way faster than you would. I would suggest you spend, at the very least, a minute looking at the card. But if it's an especially interesting card or is an especially detailed deck, or if you don't like the image, like you're uncomfortable with it, or you don't think the image has anything to do with the meaning, or, there's some dissonance between you and the card, you can spend significantly more time looking at the card. And yes, I'll talk more on that in a little bit. But just simply moving through the deck so you see each image in order, major arcanas through the minor arcana. And lots of deck creators put their minor arcana in different orders. So if you get to the minor arcana and it's an order different from what you think the minor arcana should be in, no stress. You can just explore the way that deck creator arranged their minors. And that might give you additional insight into this deck's personality. So once you have thoroughly enjoyed this practice of just looking through each card, and to be honest, this deck is an especially intricate deck. And so I've done this practice of spending a good solid moment with each card in order, maybe at least 3 times now. And I have just relished each and every experience because these cards are so fantastic. I see something new each and every time. So maybe your deck is not quite this intricate, and in that case, maybe one look through is sufficient. And even if you do think that's the case intellectually, if you feel called to, I definitely suggest you go through it again, because even the Rider-Waite-Smith deck that I have that I learned with, you know, I still see new things when I look at it. So the second suggestion for looking at your deck is to lay it out on the floor. Unless you have like a massive table, then that's cool too. And the way I like to lay mine out is I like to put the major arcana in the tableau format, where the Fool is at the very top in his very, or her, their very own row. And then there are 3 rows of 7. And you just go 1 through 7, 8, etc. I don't feel like doing math right now. You can though. And so I like to put them in that order. On occasion though, I also like to put them just in like one big string and take my Fool and sort of follow, like put the Fool with each card along the way. You know, you lay it out however it feels good to you. The point though is to see the cards next to each other and glean some insight from looking at them as a group. Now, when you get to the minor arcana, I really like to put all of the aces in one column, all of the 2s in the next column, all of the 3s in the next column, so that each of the suits runs across a row. And this way I can look at it from up to down as well as left to right, or right to left and down to up. But it is a enjoyable way to see how the suits interact with each other, as well as how they do or don't tell a story throughout their suit. And then I like to take the court cards separate. If you wanted to, you could smash them up against the minors that we already mentioned, but I like to give them their own little grid where I put all of the pages, all of the, or, you know, princesses, all of the knights or princes, all of the queens, and then all of the kings or knights, depending on, you know, what system you're working with. But, you know, it's a similar way of looking at the minors, just with the courts. And then the very last suggestion I have for gazing at your cards is to pick back up on that previous mention of cards that you don't like, or that you just don't get. Simply having dissonance between you and the visual representation of an archetype is in no way a bad thing. But if there are some cards, if you've noticed in the first 2 exercises, or you just know that there's a couple of cards that are dissonant between you and them, you can pull them out of the deck and spend at least 5 minutes gazing into the card. And you can let your focus be anywhere on the card. You can look just at one detail for as long as it calls to you, or you can try and like look at the whole thing as an entirety, whatever feels most resonant to you, because your attention will be brought to where it needs to be to gain the insight you need. And if after 5 minutes of doing that, you still dislike the card or just don't get it, or have some other difficulty with it, you can continue this practice for 2 additional days. So that's 3 days of staring at one card for 5 minutes each day. And this practice was given to me when I was learning from Naha at 22 Teachings. And it is one of the most, that was not the first time I had heard of the exercise, but that was the first time I took this last exercise seriously. because it seemed too simple. And I have found it to be one of the most effective ways to get to know a tarot card. So even in the morning when I'm pulling my morning spread, if there's a card that I just don't know how it applies to me in that particular moment, I will do this exercise with it, and I absolutely love it. I always gain insight into both the meaning of the card and the context I am looking at the card in. So much love. I hope this was supportive, at the very least in inspiring your own creative avenues to become more intimate with a deck of your choice.